She paid for a seat. She had every right to be there. But the moment she stepped into first class, the stares, the whispers, the judgment, it all began. Isabella Monroe, a successful black woman, wasn't just another passenger that day. She was a mother-to-be, a woman of unwavering strength and quiet dignity. Yet to them, she was an outsider, an intruder in a space they had long decided wasn't meant for people like her. From the instant she boarded, the humiliation was relentless. Evelyn Drake, the flight attendant who should have welcomed her with professionalism and respect, instead saw Isabella as an opportunity to degrade. The elite passengers, the wealthy and the privileged, laughed quietly, whispered behind manicured hands, and watched with thinly veiled amusement as Isabella was treated like she didn't belong. But this is more than a story about discrimination. It's about what happens when injustice meets its reckoning, when those who abuse their power are stripped of it, when the silent refuse to stay silent any longer. What would you do if this happened to you? Have you ever witnessed something like this? Share your thoughts in the comments and let us know where you're watching from. And if you believe no one should be judged by the color of their skin, hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories that expose the truth, challenge injustice, and prove that no one is untouchable. Let's begin. Isabella Monroe stepped into the first-class cabin, her presence immediately drawing attention. Not the welcoming kind, but the kind that lingered with quiet, unspoken judgment. She adjusted the strap of her designer handbag and instinctively placed a protective hand over her pregnant belly. The scent of luxury filled the air. Expensive cologne, freshly pressed linens, and the faint aroma of champagne. But beneath all that elegance was something else. A tension so thick it could be cut through with a knife. From the corner of the cabin, Evelyn Drake, the chief flight attendant, let out a barely concealed sigh of annoyance. She exchanged a glance with another attendant, her lips curling into a condescending smirk. "Looks like someone wandered into the wrong cabin again," Evelyn murmured, her voice dripping with disdain. The younger attendant hesitated before forcing a nervous chuckle, uncertain whether to indulge Evelyn's clear contempt. Isabella moved with grace, unaffected by the whispers. Her eyes scanned for her seat number. She had worked too hard to let moments like this get under her skin. But just as she reached her assigned row, Evelyn stepped into her path, blocking the way with a pointedly raised brow. "Excuse me," Evelyn said, tilting her head in exaggerated confusion. "Are you sure you're in the right place? This is first class, not—" She paused just long enough to let the implication hang in the air. Isabella met her gaze evenly. "I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be," she replied, cool and calm. Evelyn's lips twitched, displeased. Before she could speak again, a voice chimed in from one of the plush leather seats nearby. "Doesn't seem like it," remarked Judith Langford, a woman draped in pearls and old money. She didn't bother looking up from her newspaper. "I don't understand why they're letting just anyone into first class these days." A few passengers chuckled under their breath, some barely concealing their amusement, while others watched with curiosity, waiting for the scene to unfold. Isabella exhaled slowly, resisting the urge to roll her eyes. She wasn't new to this, the quiet, insidious prejudice disguised as policy. The constant questioning of her belonging in spaces she had every right to occupy. But she wouldn't give them what they wanted. She adjusted the strap of her bag and took a step forward. "If you don't mind," she said, her voice steady, "I'd like to get to my seat." Evelyn hesitated, then stepped aside with an exaggerated sigh. "Of course," she said, her tone sickly sweet but entirely insincere. "Make yourself comfortable." As Isabella settled into her seat, she felt the weight of their stares pressing down on her. Judging, scrutinizing, dissecting. She focused on steadying her breath, reminding herself she had every right to be there. But Evelyn Drake wasn't done. The chief flight attendant lingered by her row, arms crossed over her neatly pressed uniform. "Boarding pass," she said, extending her hand with deliberate slowness. Isabella blinked. "Excuse me." "Your boarding pass," Evelyn repeated, sighing dramatically. "First class seating requires verification." especially in cases like this. Isabella's stomach twisted. She retrieved her ticket from her purse, fingers fumbling slightly. Evelyn took it without even glancing at it. Then, in a deliberate act of cruelty, she let it slip from her fingers. The ticket floated to the floor near Isabella's feet. "Oops," Evelyn said, not bothering to feign apology. "I assume you're used to picking things up from the ground." A hot flush of shame rose up Isabella's neck. She clenched her fists, nails pressing into her palms, but she didn't react. Slowly, awkwardly, she leaned forward, her belly making the movement difficult, and retrieved the ticket. Before she could sit back up, Evelyn snatched it from her hand. "Well, what do you know?" Evelyn hummed, barely glancing at the pass. "It does say first class. Must have used all your savings on this, huh?" Isabella said nothing. She sat frozen, her mouth dry, the laughter around her growing louder. Evelyn tossed the ticket onto Isabella's lap like trash. "Guess they really are letting anyone in these days," she said, turning on her heel. Isabella's hands trembled as she clutched the ticket. Around her, the whispers continued. "She probably got it through one of those charity programs," Judith mused aloud. "Or a pity upgrade," the man beside her added. Isabella exhaled, steadying herself. She stared out the window, pretending not to hear them. But Evelyn Drake had no intention of stopping. The cruelty continued, petty, deliberate. Evelyn helped stow Isabella's bag, only to drop it hard enough to spill its contents across the aisle. Her personal items scattered. Dollar bills fluttered like fallen leaves. A murmur of laughter rippled through the cabin. And when Isabella knelt awkwardly to retrieve them, Evelyn pressed the heel of her polished shoe over one of the bills. "Come on," Evelyn whispered, low enough for only Isabella to hear. "You should be used to this." Isabella's hand hovered just inches away. She hesitated. Then, slowly, she withdrew. Evelyn gave a satisfied hum, letting the crumpled bill slide away. Later, Evelyn offered Isabella a blanket. She tossed it onto her lap, a stained, foul-smelling thing that reeked of neglect. Murmurs of disgust, even from some passengers who'd earlier found amusement in her suffering. "Oops," Evelyn said again. "Didn't realize it wasn't fresh. But I'm sure you don't mind." And still, Isabella sat frozen, her throat tight, humiliation thick as fog. The meal service was the same. Isabella's requests for salmon and filet mignon were denied with mocking faux regret. Only the vegetarian pasta remained. Evelyn scribbled the order down with the words, "I'm sure you're used to making do." Judith Langford smirked. Reginald Thorpe, another privileged spectator, chuckled. "She should be grateful," he murmured. "She's probably used to skipping meals." And then Evelyn tightened Isabella's seatbelt unnecessarily, making it uncomfortably snug across her growing belly. She leaned in close, her breath warm against Isabella's ear. "You should really learn your place," she whispered. "No one here's going to help you." Isabella's vision blurred, not from tears but from exhaustion. Yet she said nothing, did nothing, endured, until she didn't. When Evelyn pushed a service cart deliberately into Isabella's belly, the pain was sharp and immediate. Gasps rippled through the cabin. Evelyn feigned innocence. "Oh dear, you should be more careful." But Isabella's fear wasn't for herself. It was for her unborn child. She pressed her hands protectively over her stomach, willing herself to breathe. And then, finally, she acted. She reached for her phone, scrolled through her contacts, selected name. "Press call." "It's time," Isabella murmured. The voice on the other end was calm. "Understood." Within minutes, the atmosphere shifted. The cabin doors opened. Men in tailored suits entered, their presence electric. At their head, a tall, broad-shouldered man with a quiet, dangerous authority. Cassius Monroe, Isabella's husband, CEO of the very airline they were flying on. First class fell silent. Evelyn Drake went pale. Judith Langford froze, her champagne glass trembling in her hand. Reginald Thorpe shifted in his seat, paling as realization set in. Cassius's gaze landed on his wife. She met his eyes. Something in her chest loosened. And then Cassius turned to Evelyn. You have 30 seconds, he said quietly, to explain your conduct. Evelyn stumbled through excuses. Cassius silenced her with a look. I reviewed the footage, he said. I watched you humiliate my wife, degrade her, physically assault her. He stepped closer. As of this moment, you are fired. Gasps echoed through the cabin. Evelyn stammered. Cassius ignored her. Security approached. She is permanently banned from this airline and flagged from ever working in aviation again. Evelyn sobbed. No one moved to help her. Cassius turned to the passengers. I hope you enjoyed your entertainment, he said coldly, because this is the last flight you'll ever take with my company. Judith's face drained of color. Reginald's jaw clenched. Cassius continued. You are all permanently banned, and every major airline will know why. The reality set in. There are no more excuses, no more sneers, only shame. When the plane landed, Evelyn was escorted out first. Reporters swarmed. Her disgrace was public. Judith and Reginald scrolled through breaking news stories, each headline worse than the last. Inside the terminal, Cassius took Isabella's hand, led her through the VIP lounge, into a waiting car. Are you all right? He asked quietly. She nodded. I am now. And as the car pulled away, Isabella Monroe exhaled. The world was already changing. Airlines were revising policies. Social media was ablaze with calls for justice. It had begun with one woman who refused to be broken. The end. What do you think of Isabella's story? Have you ever witnessed injustice? Share your thoughts in the comments, and let us know where you're watching from. If you believe justice must be served, hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories that challenge injustice and inspire change.